Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to the Drafting the Circus program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about everything racing this week and preview next week. Joining me in the studio, I've got Richard Youden, Luis Torres, and Christopher Deharde. Fellas, how we doing?
Good, thank you.
It's going.
Yes. Fantastic.
All right, great to have you all here. Chris, you haven't been on in a while. It's wonderful that your work schedule matched up with us. I always enjoy what you have to say. Enjoy your insights, particularly in Indy racing, which we will get to later in the program. But first, I want to talk about this Hungarian Grand Prix. I mean, people like to tell you that Formula One is boring and predictable, but every now and again they throw in a race like that just to show you that Formula One is not boring and predictable. So we've got another new winner, Esteban Ocon, a young man from France, winning for the Alpine team, which I believe is the first factory win. I mean, not an engine manufacturer win for Renault since about 2008 when Alonso won a couple races. Does that sound about right?
I think,
Could well be. Yeah.
I think Raikkonen won for them at Australia, and he also had the win at Abu Dhabi. But it was,
Was
Lotus.
that not under the Lotus name?
No.
That team though, wasn't it? Yeah,
It was Lotus Renault.
That team's been called more things than I've had hot dinners at times.
It's the same organization.
Yeah, it's funny because Renault sold it once and then bought it back. In between.
Yeah.
But I mean, Renault was one of those names with steeped in a lot of Formula One heritage. I mean, they've got, if you count up their drivers' championships as both a constructor and an engine manufacturer, they've got like 12 or 13 championships. So and to see them return to winner's circle, very good for the sport. But let's talk about the race. So we're coming off a British Grand Prix where we saw Red Bull was a little bit upset that one of the Mercedes drivers took out one of the Red Bull cars. Okay, so Lewis Hamilton took out one of the Red Bull cars. Not wanting to be outdone, Valtteri Bottas says, "Hold my beer." So Bottas gets a terrible start and trying to recover from that ends up taking out both of the Red Bull cars, at least temporarily, as well as a few other cars. And I guess the really tough part of this now is to have Alex Albon recreate that. So with that being said, Richard, I'll just let you take it away. From there, we had a red flag, a little bit of a rain delay, and then a very lonely start for Lewis Hamilton.
Indeed, but sorry, Frank, quickly before we get into Formula One thing I do want to mention is over the weekend there's a very tragic accident at Brands Hatch in England, where a marshal, volunteer marshal, sadly lost his life. These guys, every racetrack all over the world is manned by these volunteer marshals week in, week out, and without them, we wouldn't be talking about the racing that we're talking about. We wouldn't be, watching the races on TVs. These guys are the unsung heroes of the sport, and it was a horrific accident. And we're very sad that one of these guys that gives up their time doing something they love for a sport they love, to be involved in a sport in whatever way they can, lost their life in such a tragic way.
Yeah, that is tragic. Yeah. So
yeah,
thanks for mentioning that. Yep.
Yeah, no, it did leave, but it's terrible when these things happen. As I say, these guys are volunteers; they do it for the love of the sport, and great shame indeed. But moving on to the Hungarian Grand Prix. We've seen it a number of times this year, haven't we? Races which we would consider to be, the more mundane and boring races, turn out to be the thrillers and the exciting races. And in many ways, this was no different. There'd always been sort of talk about, rain this weekend coming in, or rain on the weekend coming in ahead of the race. And, qualifying or practicing qualifying was dry. And then, I must admit, I'd sort of turned the TV on to watch the race, and then I went to sort of feed the cats or whatever it were. And, I come back and all these pagodas have popped up on the grid there as this rain shower came through. And, we had something similar last year at Hungary with some rain before the start of the race. And again, it didn't disappoint, really. It created a thrilling spectacle. As you say, Valtteri Bottas, who'd qualified, second ahead of Max Verstappen, which was a great qualifying performance for Valtteri, had a pretty poor start there. I think Lando Norris got past him on the outside, and then going into turn one, Valtteri just, I don't know what he did, but he braked way too late and just plowed into the back of Lando Norris. And then just created this chain reaction of incidences, which resulted in 4 cars out: Bottas, Leclerc, Lando Norris, and Sergio Perez, all retired from the race pretty much there and then. I know that also Lance Stroll had a bit of an issue trying to get stopped into turn one. He actually sort of tried to take a shortcut over the curve at the apex of turn one, which didn't work out too well for him. And I think he was the one that he collected another car as well in the middle. I think he may have been the one that collected Leclerc in the middle of all that, but very messy. But it's under the conditions to a certain extent, it's understandable. These cars are hard enough to drive as it is, and then when they're given that sort of conditions, that slick, slippery conditions, especially when they haven't driven in that all weekend, it can be challenging. But these guys are the best in the world, and unfortunately, two guys made a mess of the start, and that sort of screwed it up for everybody else. But we that resulted in a red flag situation, which allowed a certain amount of repair work to be done to Verstappen's car and a couple of other things, and sort of restack the field a little bit. But Hamilton was on pole, if you like, for the restart. But as they were on the formation lap, as it were, or whatever you want to call it, post restart to the grid, it was obvious that the wet weather tyres that everybody was on from the restart, or from the moment of the red flag, were the wrong tyre. Slick tyres was the way to go. The track had dried in that red flag period, and everybody, apart from Hamilton, dived into the pits to get changed onto slicks. And Hamilton was sort of sat there. It was the most amazing sight. One car on the grid. I mean, God, if he jumped the start, it would have been embarrassing, wouldn't it?
2005 U.S. Grand Prix. This is a messed up start. 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. Hold my beer.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let me ask.
It was comedy.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you this question, Richard. So, saying Hamilton went into the pits as well, right?
Yep.
So there would be nobody there, but the rules still call for a standing start. Would they just have not had the standing start? Would they have had to do another? Would they have to do another formation lap? Had everybody come in?
I think what would have happened is the 5 lights would have come on and then gone out. And at the moment when the lights go out, the green light would have come on at the pit lane. So typically, when a car starts at the end of the pit lane, the race director, Michael Massey, he will control the lights at the end of the pit lane. And when every car has safely passed the exit of the pit lane, he will turn that light on green. So the car starting from the pit lane doesn't emerge from the pit lane in the middle of the pack and potentially get an unfair advantage. So he sort of controls that. So I think what would have happened is the lights would have gone out, and then pretty much straight away he would have turned or opened the pit lane exit. So it's probably one of those things that's not written in the rule book. Everybody would have been sat there like, what do we do now, guys?
It's kind of unusual,
But they seem to cope, and it looked like George Russell tried to get a little bit cheeky and gain a few spots off the restart there. suddenly found himself well up on the pack, but he had to drop back. But Latifi was up there, Ocon was up there, Seb was up there, and basically that's the way it stayed for the majority of the race. I mean, Ocon and Seb were battling hard the whole race, and Lewis drove through the pack as you'd expect, but didn't really make some of the gains that you maybe saw at Silverstone, 2 weeks prior. But and I think with the damage to Verstappen, he was really unable to make much progress through the pack. I mean, it took him forever to get past one of the Haas cars, so it was difficult for him. His car was very, very, very heavily damaged there, and under that red flag, they were sort of putting it together with tape really to hold it together. But it was a shame. But really, what won it for Ocon was that Vettel had a slow pit stop, which I think if that had been a normal pit stop, he would have come out ahead of Ocon on the undercut. But unfortunately, at the end of the race, it was all immaterial. Ocon got his first win, so congratulations to him. It was a deserved win. He did what he needed to do. He led 70 laps of the race almost, or 65 laps of the race, and
the wind didn't follow to his lap. I mean, obviously, there was a little luck involved in him finding himself in the lead, but from there he held on to it and defended it.
He did exactly what he needed to do. And Seb's a veteran, he knows what he's doing, and Seb looked after his tires but still couldn't find the way past. He had a couple of close calls, but in reality it just wasn't quite enough. But unfortunately for Seb, he, I did notice this watching the race. He stopped his car pretty soon after the end of the race and didn't complete the sort of cool down lap and pull into Parc Ferme as normal, and got a ride on the back of a moped or whatever back to the pit lane, which is unusual. And unfortunately, what I feared did appear to be the case. He'd used too much fuel. He hadn't run out of fuel, but the rules clearly state that a certain amount of fuel needs to be left in the car at the end of the race for the FIA to take fuel samples and do their scrutineering. And from sounds of things, that wasn't the case. And subsequently, and not without precedence, he lost that second place finish, which again promoted Hamilton to second. Sort of really, it was a shame because the amount of fuel that was not left in the car is not going to affect his pace. You're talking tenths of a second over the course of the race in reality. But the reason for that rule is they need to have a decent sample amount, which begs the question, right? Since there's no refueling in Formula One, why can they not test the fuel before the race? Or is there a way to manipulate the fuel with something in the engine mapping? Well, there's this whole oil mixing, and there's the whole oil mixing with the fuel that Ferrari is supposedly doing. So I guess they do want to see what the fuel looks like post race. So who knows what's going on? I mean, goodness me, going back to Monaco years ago, there was a Ferrari mechanic that was supposedly putting contaminant in his own car to try and jeopardize them and all that sort of stuff. But it's all a little bit cloak and dagger at times with fuels. The teams and engine manufacturers who typically would supply the fuel do, they're very, very closely guarded secret. So to a certain extent, it's not surprising that they want to test them to make sure they're not. There's a whole section of the rule book on fuel and fuel configuration and fuel chemistry, which is way beyond my scope of knowledge on these sort of things. But to say the least, some very, very clever people trying to trick the FIA pretty much on a regular basis with this sort of stuff. So it's understandable they want to do some samples there. But it is shame for Vettel there. Obviously promoted the guys behind. Alonso drove a great race, and Alonso really, I thought the way Alonso defended against Hamilton was fantastic. I mean, eventually Hamilton got past after Alonso locked up into turn one, but Alonso, he's driving so well. He just turned 40 on the Thursday before the race, but was driving fantastically. Hats off to the guy. I was very, very impressed with him that over the weekend. And some other standout performances there. Carlos Sainz had a good race, and you can't go the race summary from Hungary without mentioning Williams. Not only did they score the first points, but had a double points finish. Eventually, I think they ended up 7th and 8th, wasn't it, after Ocon's penalty? And there was a stage at the race.
Vettel's penalty.
Sorry,
second place finisher's penalty, according to Ferrari.
Yes, exactly. The man whose name shall not be mentioned. But one thing that did strike me during the coverage was at the point when Latifi, I think Latifi was running third at one point, which actually helped Ocon and Vettel sort of stretch out and create a bit of a gap, which gave them a bit of flexibility in the strategy, I think. But George Russell came on the radio, and obviously, these guys, they can see the giant scoreboards. They know where their teammates are. They know what's. It's amazing at times listening to these drivers how aware they are of what's going on during the race, doing what they're doing. And he said, look, hey, if you need to jeopardize my strategy and my race to benefit, Latifi, then do it. Do whatever you need to do for me. Just get a good result for the team. And that was great to hear. I mean, and some people may sort of be a bit cynical about it and say, well, he's just saying that. But no, I genuinely do believe that George is a team player. And, on a weekend where, the last race weekend before the summer break, and supposedly during the summer break is when Mercedes will be making their decision on who will be partnering Lewis Hamilton in 2022. You look at Valtteri's performance over the weekend, which was, that start was just amateurish, I hate to say.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's not really helping his case going into
the
break.
In my piece, I put zero favors. It did.
Yeah, and then when you compare what George did, a really mature, smart race. And, at one point, Latifi was almost 20, 30 seconds ahead of Russell. And then Russell pulled it back to, only a couple of places, a couple of seconds behind. And people were criticizing Russell that he was very timid through that melee in the first corner. But it's like, seriously? I mean, you're going to criticize the guy for that? I thought that was ridiculous. Both of those Williams drivers drove a great, mature, sensible race. Didn't panic, didn't do anything crazy. When they were in the position to score good, solid, reliable points, they did. And it also, it means they're ahead of Haas in the championship, and they're also now ahead of Alfa Romeo. And I think with the number of points they got and the number of points that Alfa will score, it may well mean that they finish ahead of both of those teams in the Constructors' Championship, which it doesn't sound much. And for a team of Williams's heritage, it's not, you think, why are people getting excited about that? But when you consider where they've been the last couple of years, it's a huge step up. And George was, the kid was emotional during those, the post-race interviews. I mean, he cares. He really cares. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and I strongly believe more and more now that he will be at Mercedes next year, and that announcement will come before we race again.
Yeah, the only thing we know is that he'll be testing the 2022 tires with Mercedes and soon.
Okay, has that been announced? Fair enough. But
it hasn't been officially announced, just a tire test for the new car.
Yeah. I mean, Haas did one post Silverstone, I think, didn't they? And they're all, every team is getting an opportunity to test these new 18-inch rims as opposed to the 13-inch rims going into next year, and get an understanding for the baseline of the tire and the construction and the profile of the tire. So I just think that Valtteri has run his course, I think, at Mercedes. Unfortunately, I think he's a great driver and a great person, but I just don't think I don't think there's any reason for Mercedes to continue. And again, we mentioned it post Silverstone. And I know he was taken out in the first lap, but Perez, again, in qualifying, it wasn't amazing. He didn't have another, it wasn't an amazing weekend from Perez. It's just
he didn't get a chance to run the final lap because it was too late. He got the final.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't.
He would end up probably in fourth, but other than that, it was just miswash.
Yeah, again, you look at it and you look at what and you look at Hamilton's performances and Verstappen's performances, and even guys like Lando Norris and some of these other guys, there is a real, I don't know if this is the right, real substance to their performance week in, week out. You get value for money, you get something from it. And I think that you look at Bottas, you look at Perez, there's that little bit missing. And unfortunately, at this level of sport, you need that little bit extra. You need that. You don't need one teammate at 100% and the other at 80%. You need one at 100 and one at 90 or 95. You need something that will invigorate that side of the garage and really push both drivers. And it does. You do wonder about Perez, where his future lies. I would have thought if they were going to run him next year, they would have made that announcement already. Again, the other question is, who would they put in? Would they put Gasly back in there? I mean, I don't think you can ask any more from Gasly than he has done, really. Since he got demoted back to the AlphaTauri team. So I'd like to see him get that opportunity. May not happen. I'll tell you this much: if I was Helmut Marko or Christian Horner or Dieter Matterschmidt, one of these guys who's high up in the Red Bull camp, while Mercedes appeared to be procrastinating over George Russell, I'd be knocking on his door, because he's got no firm contract with Mercedes for next year, and Williams next year, so he is technically a free agent now. That may force Mercedes' hand. I don't know, but Perez is solid. But again, we talked about it with Albon, and in the past, you need more than solid if you're going to go up against Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, all these guys.
Yeah, and that is true, and I'll definitely give you that. I think it was the first practice. It seems like he's nowhere near close to Red Bull, and then as the week progresses, it gets better and better, but it needs to be more. Now that Red Bull has pretty much, I view it as an implosion out of their own doing. Because everything that's happened, they're imploding. They're dwelling on the whole demanding a race ban and all that stuff. And I said it up front.
I think that distracted them. Yeah,
you cannot dwell on it when we have this close of a championship for the first time in 3 years. When Ferrari were trying to bail before they self-destructed in Singapore 17 and then Germany 18 with Vettel's blunder.
I mean, you've got to give Mercedes credit. They bounced back at Hungary at a track that has been typically a Red Bull stronghold for the last few seasons. So you've got to give them a lot of credit there, because in reality, this Red Bull even weren't close enough throughout practice and qualifying to really compete with Mercedes. Mercedes had that edge all weekend. So you've got to give them a lot of credit for that. You could be very right. It could have been of their own doing. They could have got distracted by this whole Lewis Hamilton thing. One thing I did want to bring up very quickly before we sort of move on here was, again, the penalty system. So during the sort of red flag restart scenario, I think it was it Raikkonen or Giovinazzi got released into the path of the Haas of Mazepin. Raikkonen, yeah. So actually broke Mazepin's front right suspension, which put Mazepin out of the race. And for that, Raikkonen got a 10-second penalty, which was the same penalty as Hamilton got at Silverstone. So you think, okay, he's taking somebody out of the race.
Like Leclerc and Perez got in Hungary.
Yeah. But then Giovinazzi got penalised for speeding in the pit lane, and his penalty was a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, which equates to roughly 30 to 35 seconds, depending on the track. Now, speeding in the pit lane, you could be 1 mile an hour over the pit limit. The pit limit is 50 miles an hour, and you could be 1 mile an hour over that, and you get that harsh penalty. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying that the 10-second stop-go penalty is not a justified penalty for speeding in the pit lane, because at the end of the day, these guys have a pit limiter button on the steering wheel, so there's not many people to blame if they miss. If they speed, it's their own fault. Either their fault or the team's fault for calibrating the pit lane speed limiter wrong, which is very unusual. So I just wonder where that balance is. Something doesn't sit right for me there. I think
it seems like the one penalty should be more severe than the other, and not the other way around. Although, I mean, at the end of the day, Kimi saved Mazepin the trouble of damaging his own car, which
very true.
He tends to do. So now, Christopher, you've been quiet over there, so I just wanted to before we move away from the discussion on the Hungarian Grand Prix, I want to see if you have any thoughts, anything to add.
Hungary's produced some very weird races through the years. Really, I'm just thrilled that we have a first-time winner again, and especially given how Esteban was in Formula One, then he was out, and he was able to get back in, and of course, he has one of the best drivers of the last 20 years there. No matter what you think of Alonso, I mean, winning the world championship twice is no small feat. It's very good to see Esteban get that win, and I'm really happy for him, and I'm really especially happy for Williams as well with the fact that they were able to score double points as well. That's really all I got on Hungary.
All right, now I wanted to bring this up, Chris. For you and I were talking about during our pre-show about this a little bit. There's a story circulating that I had read earlier today that somebody at Ferrari thinks it's a good idea that if there's an accident that causes damage to a car caused by another driver, that the driver causing the accident should be held financially liable and pay for that team's repair, which I you know what I mean? I just personally, I find that to be a very slippery slope. Because number one, the thing about assigning blame to a crash is subjective at best in some cases. But then I just wonder, what do we have next, man? We have bring contingency fee lawyers into the mix here. Have you been damaged by Lewis Hamilton? Don't fight him yourself. Go to the law team of the Hammer.
No win, no fee.
The sad thing is that Frank, you've seen me in person. You know that my vision isn't always the best. I wear glasses, and the fact of the matter is that I literally had to pay to read that.
That's terrible. Yeah, but I think it sets a dangerous precedent in auto racing. You know what I mean? And I don't. I know there have been a few things here and there, like on a local level, with somebody being upset with one another and maybe suing somebody for damaging their race car. But at the professional level, I mean, this is, it's the cost of doing business, if you ask me.
Sometimes, though, some drivers will help other drivers out, out of their own pocket for the goodwill of the sport. Sarah Fisher, is one primary benefactor of this. She had the incident with Tony Kanaan at the 2008 Indy 500 where she hit Kanaan's car after Kanaan hit the turn 3 wall after Marco Andretti, surprised him, passed him going into turn 3. Fisher's car had a lot of damage to the floor of the car, and Andretti Autosport actually helped her out and actually bought her a new one because she had a sponsor that pulled out. She had another sponsor that came in at the last minute to help her out. And then to have that happen was just so bad. So some teams do that. And another one that was kind of cool, in my opinion, was Eldora Speedway posted a video of a race from 1986 where Jack Hewitt won after he spun another driver out in the final lap. And he actually said in the victory lane interview, I'll give him the other guy the difference between first and second. He hates that he won like that. So yeah, if someone knows that they messed up, then yeah, they will try and make it right most of the time if they're sporting.
Yeah,
I mean that's
I was Schrader at an ARCA race where he bumped the guy out of the way. And he waited until aforementioned car that he turned get by, cost him the win, but he didn't want to win it that way.
Yeah, again, though, that's a matter of somebody, like you say, like the word you used, Chris, was sporting, which I really like that word. And Andretti Autosport with considerable resources compared to Sarah Fisher Racing. But, at the end of the day, they know, Sarah's a good person. She's good for the series. So they were happy to help her out. But to legislate the thing, you know what I mean? At the Formula One level, where these guys got crazy budgets to begin with, it just opens up a big can of worms. And I really hope that nobody takes that seriously. All right. So speaking of Formula One, where are we off to next? Off to the summer break.
We're off to vacation.
Vacation. Okay. That's where we'll have a lot of our silly season rumors and announcements generally come in to that there. So that'll be interesting. And one of the names that's out there floating around is Nico Hulkenberg. He's been linked to a seat at Williams. He's also been linked to a seat at what's the other seat he's been linked to in Formula One?
I don't think there's many left. I mean,
I was gonna say, but he's
potentially Alfa Romeo, but
it might, Alfa. He'd like to see Alfa Romeo and Williams, but he's also been. It's been revealed this week that he's been in conversation with Ed Carpenter Racing to perhaps run that number 20 car on the street and road courses, the one that Ed likes to run the ovals himself. So obviously, Christopher, my thoughts are that if Hulkenberg gets a Formula One seat, that's going to be his go-to. I mean, that's where he wants to be. But if you look at some of these guys that have come over from F1, like Grosjean, who was apparently having a great time in the series, and he's doing well, and he's gaining fans. And Ericsson, another guy who's come over from Formula One, who's doing well. What do you think about Hulkenberg in the series? Do you think he would enjoy that as well, or?
I think he would, but I think he's not. To me, he's not as much of a draw as Grosjean was. In America, Grosjean, he did drive for the Haas team, which it may not carry necessarily a lot of weight, but it may carry a little. So some Americans might be a little bit more familiar with them, or would root for him because of that. But also, when Grosjean came over, he came over with an attitude of, I have a lot to learn. Just because I come from Formula One doesn't mean I necessarily know everything. And I want to do what I can to work, with this team and work and do, good things. And he's done very well with that. I mean, heck, you look at the fact that he's truly embraced, really. That's the word I was looking for. He's embraced, the American racing scene and the American racing culture. You look at, the stories of him with his family going in the RV, going all across the country. This is someone who actively wants to be here and someone who really enjoys the difference in the competitive environment from Formula One to IndyCar, or what we could probably say is more accurately is the difference in the competitive environment between the United States and Europe.
Yeah, and I think a couple other things that worked in Grosjean's favor were number one. I mean, he was coming off that horrible accident at the end of last season of Formula One, which was profiled heavily in the Drive to Survive series on Netflix that a lot of folks tend to watch. So that the everyone likes the comeback story, the story,
yes.
The courageous story, and then winning the pole at the Indianapolis Grand Prix, I think cemented for a lot of folks. Hey, man, this guy's the real deal. Especially when you're there right in Indianapolis, where the heart of the fan base are. So, and this guy has, just like you said, he's embraced American culture and American racing. Hulkenberg remained to be seen.
Yeah, and if Hulkenberg embraces the United States, then he would probably be as welcome. But he hasn't been in Formula One in a while. He still doesn't have a podium. I hate to bring that up, but that's the one thing that he still hasn't ticked off on his marker. Fourth place, yes, fourth place, but no podiums yet. But he's still a pretty good driver. It's just, for some reason here and there, he just, hasn't been able to get to the top, 3 steps there.
Yeah, what he does have is an overall Le Mans win, but yet to the point, no podiums in F1.
Well, the podiums in F1 are kind of hard to come by this day and age, as long as Mercedes and Red Bull are dominating. But either way, so speaking of Grosjean, they released a video this week of Grosjean running the Nashville street circuit in the simulator. So we get a really good look at how this circuit is going to run. Now, I've seen several people make their own little YouTube videos of them driving the course. Of course, you've got things like, traffic lights and other cars and these sort of things. So you really don't get the feel of it. But the full-on simulator, you've got, all the fencing there, all the walls, all the sponsor banners. And you can see how tight this circuit really is. But you can also see how long those straightaways are going over the bridge. So, Christopher, what are your thoughts on what kind of a race we're going to see here? Because if you ask me, I think we've got some pretty good braking zones where we might see some some pretty daring passes going into some of these tight corners.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I'm going to have an article coming out on frontstretch.com tomorrow about the technical challenges of, this circuit. But, for me, when we look at this circuit, the biggest things that stand out to me, of course, you have the bridge, obviously, but your two longest straightaways at the end, they are curved leading to a braking zone. And, ask any driving instructor, you want to brake in a straight line as much as possible. That's going to be a very big technical challenge for these teams and drivers, is trying to be able to get your braking right, because if you don't get your braking right, there's not that much runoff, on a street circuit. Of course.
I did see that, and it reminded me a lot of that sort of straight curve, if that makes sense, at Russia. The back straight, it sort of curves it turns left, and then you got the right hand heavy braking zone. And I remember, is it Carlos Sainz Jr. had a huge shunt there a few years ago. And it did remind me a lot of that corner, and it's quite a good opportunity to to make some moves in there. But it should be good. Should be interesting.
Yeah, and they're saying it's very, very bumpy, to where when I think of very bumpy on a street course, I think of San Jose. But the difference is there was train tracks that caused all that stuff in San Jose. Nashville, there's no train surroundings.
Yeah,
so hopefully it's not that bad.
San Jose had cars flying. It remind me of watching videos of the Nürburgring in the 60s, those cars getting airborne like that.
Yeah.
The bridge is flat out, by the way. I did ask the engineer I spoke with, and he said, yes, the bridge is flat out.
So we have an interesting layout for the course with the start finish line is going to be, or the start line rather, will be coming off of the bridge. So we'll have a nice fast start, but the finish line will be on the backside of the course in front of the stadium, where the more expensive grandstands are. So this is not unlike Mid-Ohio, that they start and finish are in different parts of the course here. But I think that was a smart decision to put the start there rather than in the slower part of the course. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one for aesthetic purposes would be a neat start line shot. We'll see about that. But yeah, I think it was a wise decision to put it on the faster part rather than a really slow and part of the circuit. I think it was a good idea to put it where it is for the start. Yeah. So the good news for the promoters of the race is that there are almost 0 tickets left. I was on the all of the 3-day tickets are gone, and those are all the really good grandstands. There's a few 1-day tickets left, very few left for Sunday. There's a few 1-day tickets left for Friday and Saturday. So we're looking at something pretty close to Stone Cold sellout, which is very encouraging for the promoters. They've got a lot going on over the course of the weekend. They've got several support races. They've got several concerts, as well as you're just going to have the street atmosphere. They've got a big sponsor activation area. They have a family fun zone. And I think this thing is going to be a success. Year one, of course, as with any street race, it's the sustainability. We haven't seen a new street race survive in, I guess St. Pete is the last, the newest street race that's still going.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And St. Pete's been 15, 16, 18 years now. So, but
It's,
we,
I
but
don't
yeah,
know, about 20
but we-
years almost.
Yeah, but we- yeah,
and half of St. Pete's an airport, so it's not exactly a genuine downtown.
This is true.
Dig up
This is
the
true,
you know,
yeah.
dig up the city centre for 2 weeks.
Well, to Nashville's credit, a big portion of the racetrack are the parking lots at the Titan Stadium, Nissan Stadium, very similar to the old Meadowlands Grand Prix they had back in the 80s and 90s, where they went in front of Giant Stadium and around the Continental Airlines Arena, largely a parking lot race, similar to the Caesars Palace Grand Prix from years ago. But they are shutting down that whole bridge area, which does have a good bit of traffic on a day-to-day basis. But from what I understand, they've got a good plan in place for detours and whatnot. So we'll just have to see how all that plays out. At the end of the day, Nashville itself is a wonderful host city. I don't live too far from Nashville. I've been there several times. Every time I've been to Nashville, I have a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun things to do downtown. There's a lot of nice restaurants. There's a lot of really good bars. There's a lot of little honky tonk bars that you can stop in there, hear some live country music. But Nashville's not only country music, you can hear a lot of good rock and roll music and other sort of things there. I just think that this sort of event fits in well with the downtown area of Nashville, which it's a pretty hot spot. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it should be interesting, especially the Friday show they're having after all the track activities that will include good old Vince Neil, which is hilarious because if you've seen Vince Neil live, which I've yet to, I know next year, if that'll ever happen with the Poison Motley Crue Jones Jet show, don't get your expectations too high. With Vince Neil and like performances. Tim Duggar, maybe, but I'm no country guy at all. But I only know Tim Duggar just because of the iRacing involvement from last year. But I imagine Tim is pretty good. Don't quote me on that. But when it comes to Vince, just expect nothing and just enjoy it for what it's worth.
Yeah, I did see some recent videos of Vince Neil performing when you can't even. He sounds like he doesn't remember the words to the song, and he's just kind of mumbling to the cadence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Should I say former Indy Lights driver Vince Neil?
This is true. Not a lot of people know that. Vince Neil has a couple Indy Lights starts to his credit. Yes, he does. And I want to say, didn't Motley Crue sponsor an Indy car at one point in time, or at least an Indy Lights car?
Aerosmith sponsored an IndyCar in 2001.
I know Aerosmith did. I also know the Rolling Stones sponsored an IndyCar.
I don't know about Motley Crue.
I think Motley Crue put their name on probably Vince's Indy Lights car.
The only one I know is that Rat sponsor a couple NHRA, drag racing cars over the years, but I could give two rats about them.
Two rats about Rat. That's good, man.
Well, the tires went round and round.
Oh, yeah, good one. Good one.
We're not discussing that. I get ridiculed by a couple folks on Facebook about it. We're not going there.
All right. So, other than the big shakeup at Andretti, Christopher, which were the rumors about Grosjean ending up at Andretti are stronger and stronger. And there's a couple of other guys getting their name out there. It looks like we're in for. I know we talked about a bit last week, but Chris, I know you're my IndyCar insider. You live right there in Indiana, and you're got your ear to the ground there. So what are you hearing strong rumor wise, and as far as like driver placement for next year?
Nothing that's been hasn't already been said. I know Oliver Askew tested with the Rahal team over at Barber. And I'll see if I can get in touch with Alan McDonald at Rahal to see how that went. But for me, the big, it was a surprise to see that Jack Harvey won't be at Meyer Shank. If he does stay with the Honda team, he would probably be a good look over at Rahal. And can you just imagine a Harvey Rahal Askew lineup if that were to come to fruition? I mean, that for me, for my money, that's probably the best case scenario for that team. But if Grosjean does go to Andretti, I'm thinking that if Hinchcliffe's money is too good to pass up and Hinchcliffe stays, the big loser in that is Kyle Kirkwood, unless Kirkwood is able to get over to Dale Coyne Racing. Now, of course,
Ryan Hunter-Reay looks to be maybe out of the picture at Andretti as well.
Well, yeah, he just hasn't had a good season, really, or he hasn't had a lot of good things going on for him recently, which I hate to say because
Sonoma win in 2018 feels like now.
Yeah, and I hate to say that because, Hunter-Reay has always been one of those guys that is a fighter, and, it's kind of like a lazy Susan where you just, spin the table around and it gets in that one point where it's, perfect, but he hasn't forgotten how to drive. He's had podiums in in 2020, but something just is not right at that team. And I'm almost, wondering if it's really Hunter-Reay or is there something going on with engineering? Because
you got to figure Rossi's results have not been great.
No, and
Veach never reached his full potential with the team.
There was
Colton Herta pulls one out of his butt every now and again, but more often than not, he's just mired in the pack. He's either winning or mid pack.
So that, I hate to use the phrase, but it begs the question: is that on the drivers, or is there something else going on? There was the post that I think it was Marshall made that Rossi isn't exactly happy at Andretti, and quite frankly, I don't blame him. Given how 2020 turned out, I wouldn't blame him for not being happy either. So
his 2021 isn't any better for him.
No, could he be on the move? It's possible. I mean, hell, Elio winning at Indy told us that because he's a guy's not full time. No one's ever won the 500 after winning it for Roger Penske, and what do you know? He does it. Second oldest winner. So that's another thing too. Is that it's good to see him going to be being full time again. That's a very good move, especially with Meyershank going to 2 cars now too.
I think Elio still has a lot to offer to the series. I really think he does. I think he's got a lot to offer Meyershank, and if they put a young guy like an Oliver Askew in that car, or a Kyle Kirkwood, or just any young guy, I think they would benefit tremendously from having Elio as a teammate.
Well, one thing that I was a keen observer of at the Road to Indy races. One of the logos that has been, featured in in the Indy Pro 2000 series on Braden Eves' car is Meyershank Racing. I'm thinking that until Braden Eves is ready to go to IndyCar, Elio's going to have that seat, and that seat will go to Braden Eves when he is ready to go to IndyCar. Because Braden's from Ohio. Ohio is, Meyershank Racing's home. I'm thinking that that's going to happen within the next few years.
Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind that the kid is being groomed for an IndyCar seat. He's got to get through the next couple of years and learn all he can. So now, what are you hearing about Sato? Because there's rumors that Sato is either going to drop down to a part-time schedule or leave Rahal entirely, which is why Harvey's being linked to the Rahal seat. Now, Sato tends to work on 1-year contracts for whatever reason, but last I heard out of Bobby Rahal's mouth, they were working hard to retain Sato, but then the Jack Harvey talk kind of is conflicting information to that.
I haven't heard anything about the Sato situation recently. I had to, do a little bit of, question asking, but no, I haven't heard much about, Sato's plans at the moment.
All right. So with that being said, let's talk about picking a winner for Nashville. Obviously, the favorite from the fan base there will be Joseph Newgarden. And you've also got to figure, given his recent performances, probably the favorite among some of the pundits as well. But, with that out of the way, Richard, who do you think is going to win in Nashville?
Oh, boy, could be anybody, couldn't it? Let's go with willpower.
Oh, good choice. And Christopher?
I'll say Joseph for the hometown victory.
All right. Now, Louise?
I feel like Grosjean will be good, but I'm going to go with Pato on this one.
All right. And I'm going to go with reliable Scott Dixon. And now, Christopher, you had one other Indy 500 tidbit that you wanted to mention on the show. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you and let you share your share your thoughts.
So something that just, came up, in late July that, has happened today. We're recording this August the 2nd. The tower site for WIVC 1070 in Indianapolis, the site for those towers was sold, and the towers are going to be coming down. And today, August 2nd, is actually going to be the day where the 1070 AM signal goes silent. For those that know the Indianapolis 500 history, that was the home signal for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network. And since 1966, that site has been, or where the towers have been, is where the signal has been coming from. But yeah, the old 1070 AM signal in Indianapolis is going to be going dead, tonight, August 2nd. And of course, as I said, if you know the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network, 1070 was the broadcast, main partner in the Indianapolis area for that network. Sad to see that happen, but a lot of us are hoping that signal does get picked up and that they are able to, get another use for that signal in the coming few days.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, certainly that's a piece of history that, that could just be lost. So, all right. So with that being said, we've got a few minutes left to talk about NASCAR. And if you recall, we had on our show a couple of weeks ago, the owners of Top Gun Racing, their driver, R.C. Enerson, will be competing in the IndyCar race at the Brickyard weekend. But it was announced that he will also be competing in the Cup race. Now, Louise, you want to chime in on this? This is kind of interesting to me. This is when you told me this earlier today was the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, R.C. Anderson is going to drive the number 15 Rick Ware car for the Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, which will be before the Nashville IndyCar race rather than at the same time, or NASCAR after IndyCar. It'll be NASCAR first, then IndyCar when it comes to NBC this Sunday. But number 15
is he's driving at Watkins Glen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you told me he was going to run at the Brickyard.
No. What Sage Karam is running at the Brickyard in the Xfinity Series for Jordan Anderson's team. That's what's going on with Brickyard. You get the gist of it. But in NASCAR 15 car, James Davison, who primarily drives the 15 Cup car, will drive the 51 this weekend, which means Cody Ware is all essentially gonna drive the 52 for Rick Ware, Dale Coyne Rick Ware at Nashville. So yeah, Anderson will make the debut. Davison takes over Cody's Cup car while Cody runs the IndyCar race in the second Rick Ware affiliate, which is be a third Coyne car.
I mean, Rick Ware is just everywhere anymore.
Yeah, I mean, now Rick Ware has a Pinty's car with Andrew Ranger as their primary driver, almost won it.
Next thing you know, Rick Ware will be buying into the Haas Formula One team.
He's a new Warner Hodgson.
I've got this horrible feeling that whole thing's going to come unraveled at some point. But that's just some of the things that I've heard on the inside. But while he can enjoy it and spend his money, have at it, boy. But I got no evidence to back that up. But I've just heard some things that don't sort of sit particularly well. That it's not particularly sustainable. But who knows?
And again, that's that Rick Ware, Dale Coyne IndyCar for next season. If Grosjean moves to Andretti, that's another open seat. That's a possibility for somebody there as well. So we are in NASCAR. We are off to Watkins Glen, which is a favorite race of the series. Why? Because they tend to sell it out every year while their oval attendance is struggling. Watkins Glen is a stronghold for this series. They always have a great crowd there. They generally put on a pretty good show. So, Louise, what are your thoughts heading into Watkins Glen do we have Xfinity on the?
We have Xfinity, ARCA East. I mean, ARCA. Let's just say ARCA because I'm not sure. Yeah, it's ARCA.
Right.
Truck Series as well will run at Watkins Glen, where Ross Chastain was gonna run, but it's the final regular season race for the Truck Series, so he cannot run it due to the fact he's a Cup driver.
All right, so we've got a full slate of NASCAR racing up there in the Finger Lakes area, Watkins Glen. So who do you like for a win at Watkins Glen? Chase Elliott, maybe?
Yeah, that's my pick, Chase
Oh,
Elliott, which would be 3 in a row for him if he were to pull it off.
If he were to pull it off. I mean, there's Kyle Larson's been looking pretty good here and there and everywhere. Kyle Busch looks good here, there, and everywhere. So, and Martin Truex is another guy who's pretty strong on the road and street courses. And Martin, been a minute since Martin's won a race. I think he's overdue. So, Richard, who do you like?
Joey Logano.
Okay, yeah, that's a little out of the box there. So, Christopher, who do you think's gonna win a Cup race at the Glen?
Oh, since Louise already picked Chase, I'm going to say Larson.
All right, so you left me Kyle Busch. So, or
Dave Smith in the 52.
Dave Smith, yeah. Hey, is Austin Cindric going to enter the Cup race? I know.
Nope.
No
Okay. Cindric, no Allmendinger for the Cup race.
All right. Well, I mean, Allmendinger would be a good pick.
I think Cindric only has one more race based on what he said at Road America after he had that problem. Or that might have been his last race at Road America. I'm not sure. I had to go back at the replay.
Yeah, I'll just see how that shakes out. But he's being groomed. He's stepping up into a very, very good seat next year, and deservedly so. I mean, a lot of people like to. I know we like to make fun of Austin Cindric on this show because he said his path through the Indy 500 goes through NASCAR, which makes 0 sense in the world. And we like to rib him about that. But honestly, the kid's got a lot of talent, and you can, say the silver spoon factor. His dad's got him there. That's the same thing I like to say about Chase Elliott. But I'm kind of really optimistic about seeing Austin Cindric in that 2-car next year.
No, for sure. It'll be interesting to see how he fares.
All right. So we've got it's about 4 minutes left. So we'll go around the table for final thoughts, or if anything that we forgot to mention this week. I'll start with you, Louise.
I still stand to the fact that if Lance Stroll didn't avoid hitting Ocon, because with the bad steering and all that at the start, Ocon don't win that race had Stroll hit him. So he was lucky in that regard, because Stroll took out Leclerc and all that stuff with what happened over there, which he too, I guess he has a great penalty along with Bottas.
Does he? I haven't heard anything yet. Does he officially have a penalty? Because I haven't seen anything yet.
Bottas, but with Stroll,
yeah,
it was just
to be, surely. It was a shocking screw up by Stroll. I'll have a quick.
I took it as one try to avoid hitting Ocon, but also then I heard it was something that happened to the car that led to that dreadful collision. So it was like 50-50. It's like, okay, I understand you avoided a car, but you still took out others along with yourself. But if he plowed into Ocon, we were talking about a whole different race, even more than what we did.
All right. Now, Christopher, your final thought for the evening?
The summer break has been nice in the U.S. overall. It's allowed us to, kind of get recharged up, but it's going to be nice to see everybody back at the track, with Nashville and then the EDGP, and then going off to Gateway the week after that. I can't wait to get going on the road again. I actually leave for Nashville on Thursday, so I can't wait to see everybody again at the track. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while, yeah. So,
yeah, it'll be fun, and it'll be fun indeed. All I know is I'll be resting all Thursday night in Nashville.
Oh, there's no rest in downtown Nashville, man. You got to get out there. You got to get out there, sing and dance and drink, buddy. You got to
if one of y'all are there Thursday night, convince me otherwise. Convince me, and I'll sacrifice sleep. No, I have to leave Thursday morning immediately after my dead end job. Take the flight and arrive in Nashville around 5 p.m. and then sleep.
Yeah, there you go. Get some rest, because it's gonna be a jam-packed weekend in Nashville.
Yeah.
So Richard, final thought for you?
Just to confirm, Lance Stroll has got a penalty ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix, so pretty justified. I think that was a bit of a screw up on his part as well. But no, it'd be good going into the Formula One break, summer break. There, a bit of time off for everybody. It's been a little bit crazy so far this year, hasn't it? And probably some of the unknowns heading into next year with the driver lineups will be sorted and signed and sealed by the time we get back into racing. But it should be. It's been a great first half of the season. Probably you could argue that Hamilton has that lead that maybe his overall performance doesn't warrant. But let's get going in Spa. Great track, great racing there, hopefully, and see what everybody's made of.
All right, and my final thought for the evening is that it's been a long time since we had IndyCar race with the Toronto cancellation. We've been off for about a month. But we are racing 3 weeks consecutive as the Formula One is taking their summer break. So I just think this represents a wonderful opportunity for IndyCar to garner some new fans, because there are a lot more Europeans paying attention to IndyCar, watching guys like Grosjean, like Ericsson, like Rinus VeeKay. Hello, I hear you.
Yeah, Pillow.
Oh, Pillow.
Hello.
They said hello. Yeah, Pillow. Yeah, so there's a lot of European interest in IndyCar right now with some of these guys that are out there and doing well in the series. So I just really feel like this 3 week of stretch of IndyCar racing, 3 weeks in a row, falling right when Formula One is off, is going to be a nice boost for the series. Now, with that being said, we are out of time. So, Christopher, I want to thank you. Louise, I want to thank you. Richard, I want to thank you too. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And most of all, I want to thank you folks that listen to us week in and week out. But till next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.